Hey everybody, thank you for tuning into my channel. My name is Lena, founder of Jaded Nutrition. This video is a continuation of my sugar addiction video. So I got such a huge response that I wanted to put out another video all about sugar and sugar addiction. As you know, we are becoming more and more sick as a society. Heart disease is on the rise, metabolic syndrome is on the rise, and people's lives are being affected by the food choices that they're making. It's really easy to point blame at a lot of specific foods that the food companies have told us for a long time are bad for us. So, for example, we've targeted fat as an enemy. Fat in food is bad. We have to have low fat. And we've missed what the real culprit is. Sugar is by far one of the worst foods that you could be incorporating in your diet. And it's not just the white sugar, it's all sugar. So what's happening is that we're targeting white sugar, and we know that that's not good for us, but we're putting a ton of other sweeteners in the foods that we eat. Agave syrup, which has a higher fructose content than high fructose corn syrup does. Maple syrup, honey, molasses, all of these things, they're not bad foods. It's not that you should never eat them, but we're substituting white sugar for another sugar, and it's doing the same thing inside of our body. Now, when we consume high amounts of sugar, it goes into our liver. Now, our liver can't metabolize sugar. It can't process sugar. So it turns to fat inside of our liver. And we accumulate fat, which contributes to non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So the same kind of disease of the liver that alcoholics get, people that eat high amounts of sugar are also getting. This is so important to understand, that the more sugar you eat, the more sugar you're going to want. Sugar sends off a hormone release, and we get a spike in our insulin. It increases serotonin and dopamine, so we feel good when we eat it. And when we crash, we want more. We want that feeling of feeling good. It tastes good. We seek it as human beings for that instant glucose, and we want sugar. Now, the more sugar you give yourself, the more sugar you're naturally going to want. It has nothing to do with a lack of willpower. It has everything to do with our genetics, with hormone responses, with us as human beings, how we're wired to react when we consume sugar. The bottom line is, sugar is much different today than it was hundreds of years ago. It was much harder to obtain back in the day than it is now. We would have had to climb trees to get honey. We would have had to crush sugar cane in order to get it, put a tap in a tree for maple syrup. Now we go to the store and it's in kilos. We can just take it. And it's so easy to obtain. And nature really did know what it was doing when it packaged fructose inside of fruit. Because not only does that fruit carry a bunch of nutrients and minerals and vitamins, but it contains fiber. That fiber slows the release of insulin upon consumption. Because if you were to juice a fruit, like a lot of people do, they juice fruit, they take all the fiber out. Well, now all you're left with is fructose and some nutrients and minerals, but you're left with fructose, which spikes your blood sugar, which in high doses accumulates fat in the liver, and it's no different. It still makes you sick. It's also the refined carbs, the processed carbs that are damaging our body. Now, to a lesser extent, they damage the body There isn't that same production in the liver that happens when we consume fructose that there is when we consume excess glucose. So white grains, white rice, bread, pasta, anything that is high in carbs, low in fiber, has been stripped of its nutrients, is high in glucose, but glucose isn't the issue. It's fructose. So yes, you will still get fat eating those foods. You will still put weight on, but it won't make you sick like sugar will, like fructose will. The sugar industry will say everything in moderation. The dose makes the poison. For sure it does. The dose really does make the poison. But if you know that you're going to have a hormone response that signals you to keep reaching for more and more sugar, then it really has nothing to do with having a small dose, because you know that that's basically impossible. When we eat foods that are high in sugar, it's predictable that we're going to gain weight and that we're going to want to keep eating. And this comes on a physiological level, it comes on an emotional level. There's so many aspects to consuming excess sugar. Now, on a physiological level, it sends off that hormone response, and we keep wanting and wanting and wanting. It also releases dopamine. So the brain is flooded with dopamine, the more sugar and processed foods that we consume, and the less dopamine receptors that your body is going to make, because your brain has been flooded. So now your dopamine is downregulated, and you actually need more of those foods to get that same satisfying feeling. It's no different than drugs. The same thing happens in the brain with drugs. And the more drugs you do, the more drugs you actually need to feel that same high. But when we consume drugs, when we consume excess sugar, those dopamine receptors now become downregulated and we need more. So you don't just want more sugar, you need it in order to feel that same high. Sugar is no different than drugs. So you can look down your nose at people that use drugs, but if you're addicted to sugar, you're no different. It's time that we start making informed decisions for ourselves and not just listening to what we should or shouldn't eat by government. Because here's the sad part, the government doesn't care about you. The government doesn't care that you get all the nutrients that you need. The government doesn't care. The government wants to make money. The food industry wants to make money. Now, if you're healthy, you're not making money. The health industry isn't making money off of you, are they? Because there's no profit in healthy people. And there's no profit in dead people because you're dead. The profit is in chronically sick people. If you're chronically sick, like with diabetes or heart disease or high blood pressure, well, guess how much money you are making the health industry. Now, you don't think that the health industry and the government and the food industry ever talk, they ever think about things like that? I can tell you that they do. You better believe that the government, the health industry, the food industry, they don't have your best interests at heart. They have money. They have money at stake. And as long as they can fill their pockets, they will sell you anything and everything. And sugar is cheap. Processed foods are cheap. And they also pry on people who are low income, that know that they can afford healthy food because healthy food is expensive. And so the government plants this fear, the food industry plants this fear in people's lives, saying, actually the food industry plants fear in the government saying, well, if healthy food is more expensive and we take processed food off the shelves, how are people going to eat? So it's all fear tactic. Fear, fear, fear. And we're never going to get away from disease, metabolic syndrome, heart disease, if we don't stop consuming these foods. And I know that healthy food does cost more, but again, unless you are living on the streets or you are really, really struggling to make ends meet, there's always a way to eat healthier. You don't have to eat complete junk food. You don't have to live off frozen dinners, and you don't have to eat high amounts of sugar. You can eat on a modest budget, but you can eat healthy. You could eat more plant-based foods because beans, whether they're organic or not, are cheap. Beans, grains, all of those things are cheap. They're not expensive. When you do eat meat, if you eat grass-fed, maybe you eat a little bit less of it. Your vegetables, again, I always go back to the Dirty Dozen list. There are certain fruits and vegetables that are sprayed more with herbicides and pesticides. If you can buy those things organic or local at a farmer's market, that's going to be way more advantageous. And maybe bigger things like squash or sweet potatoes, maybe those aren't organic, but trying to eat organic whenever possible. If you eat whole foods that don't come with a bunch of health claims, it's predictable that you're going to be healthy because those foods speak for themselves. They don't have to come with health claims. They don't have to claim to be low in fat or high in fiber or all natural. They just are natural. So sugar really is the number one culprit. And I'm going to go as far as to say it is our enemy. It is what you need to cut out of your diet. Now, of course, natural sugars are going to be more mineral dense. And when they are used on a smaller scale, that's still okay. But again, if you're just eating straight sugar all the time, whether it's honey or maple syrup or whatever, it's still going to make you sick over time. And you're still going to want more and more and more. Sugar addiction, it is everywhere. And not just on a physical level, but it affects us on an emotional level as well. Because we turn to it for comfort. We turn to it to hold a place in our lives when we're feeling empty. There are so many different aspects to sugar addiction. I'm going to be putting out more and more videos talking about sugar, what we can do about it, and how we can get it out of our diet. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please leave me a comment below, share this video, like it, and subscribe to my YouTube channel, Jaded Nutrition. Bye-bye.